I'm Trina, an Indigenous filmmaker, storyteller, and intuition teacher. I was born and raised in the Treaty 8 territory in Northern Canada in a blended race family. And after many years on my own healing journey, my goal is to inspire you to take a deep look inside of yourself to create a life of love and peace.
And I'm Kaylin. I'm empathic. I have an academic background in supporting neurodiversity in education, and I have a host of super meticulous word nerd skills. My goal here is to use curiosity and empathy to facilitate conscious conversations that inspire you to explore and to ultimately find peace in a deeper sense of self.
Ruby Tunke was born and raised in the Peace Country of Northern Alberta. She currently resides in one of the most southern cities of Alberta. Although Ruby loves living in Medicine Hat, she feels a deep connection to the Peace Country. Ruby is a conscious channeler and can often be found assisting people and humanity through her remote sessions. Ruby has also authored a children's book, Grandpa's Secret. Grandpa's Secret is aimed at normalizing life and death as natural human processes that we experience. I am inviting you to share the space with one of my dearest and most favorite people on planet Earth, Ruby. She's been a mentor of mine and now a dear friend. She is one of those people who I look at like this loving, genuine auntie. She accepts me for exactly who I am. She's there to hold the line. And when I trip, fumble, or fall, she has no judgment. She has a helping hand. She's compassionate. She's loving. And she is thoroughly compelled to be an asset and assist humanity in their evolution. Like once you sit with her and once you meet with her and when you work with her, you realize she is your team mate, team coach, team member. She is cheering you on and she wholeheartedly wants you to succeed. And that's one of the reasons I've been able to excel and propel so far so fast, is because I have someone like Ruby understanding me, seeing me, and accepting me and allowing me to progress at my own speed, my own way. And so here I'm going to share her with you. She's one of my lifelines. She's my 911, Ruby Tunke. Welcome, Ruby. All right, so today I am so thrilled for our final episode of this series of People for Peace podcast. Today I am hosting in, and I invited one of my favorite people on planet Earth to come in and close this segment for us. Her name is Ruby Tunke. She is a friend, a mentor, and an intuitive channel, and I want you to meet her firsthand. Welcome, Ruby. So,
Hi,
Ruby,
Trina.
tell us, what is an intuitive channel? What does an intuitive channel do?
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I know what I do is I tap into that place that's kind of like beyond the conditioned mind. And it's almost as if your guides let me feel into your energetic body. So sometimes it'll be environmental, sometimes it'll be relationship, emotional, might have to do with career, I don't know. And while they are writing, I use the medium of automatic writing. I don't know if Trina had explained that or not, but it's a form of no, okay. So it's a form of medium, psychic mediumship. So basically, it's just a tool that connects me to your energy. And what happens is the information comes through in the writing. So it's almost as if the guides are using my actual hands to write. And at the same time that that writing is taking place, I'm getting all kinds of images. I'm getting an expanded version of your energy. So that allows me to then interpret. So I really just act as an interpreter from between you and your, if you want to call it higher self or guides, whatever is easiest for you to take in at that time.
What are guides?
So guides are many, many things. So it just keep in mind that the whole world is energy. So guides can be people that have passed on before. So the energy can take the form of people that have passed on before, if that's your comfort zone. They're just your highest awareness. So it's you in your highest form of awareness, because we, in essence, we're really just like a slice of source or a slice of God. But within that slice is the completeness of God. So it's not like we're just a part of God. We're wholly that. And if you want to use the word source, universe, God,
Creator.
Jehovah,
Yeah.
pardon me?
Creator.
Yes, yeah, whatever you want to use. So just keep in mind that everything is energy, including ourselves. And so your guides could be whatever form you're comfortable with, whatever form your mind will allow you to accept. And so it's just information from your creator to yourself.
I like how you said whatever form your mind will allow or what you're comfortable with, because when I first met you, Ruby, back here in Dawson Creek when you lived here, you stepped into my life literally and left a calling card literally. And I had no clue or concept what intuition was, what any of this was. I had no idea. I was busy being a business person and I was so business focused in my design photography business for a long time. And I had just put up this big business, and then you walked into my life and changed it forever. So when I first met you, and I remember asking you, like, what do you do? You came to get a graphic design done for your event that you were hosting, and it was a psychic fair type of thing. And I was like, what is that? What do you do? I didn't even understand it. I had no clue. But yet I had this lovely feeling off of you, like that you were some long lost auntie that I had or needed to know, right? And so I remember
Mhm.
thinking, and I remember asking you, you said, oh, the guides will write this letter. And I'm like, guides? What guide? What? And I was thinking, what is this great? What? This is weird. This is crazy. And I had no clue what you were even talking about. So when you said what your mind will allow, it's kind of like what you're ready for. I didn't feel ready
Mhm.
in any way, shape, or form, but I was having a bit of a personal breakdown at that point in my life. And so I was like, I looking back, I realized I was kind of going like, how am I gonna fix this? What am I gonna do? How am I gonna get help? And then I'm just doing that in my mind, right? You don't know that. You stroll in, leave me a card and a magazine and suggest I call you if I need to or something like that. And I, in my desperation, book an appointment. I come to your house in person. I sit with you and you don't even talk. You just write, 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 write. And then you start sharing what you're writing. And it all made such sense. Some things I was a little hesitant, like when you called me out on my ego, and we'll talk about that later. You probably don't even remember, but I certainly do. My ego remembers it. Anyways, so the point is at that point, that's all my mind could allow me to take in, right? And you guided me. So what you were saying is you were tapping into my energy at that time, what I was available to give you, and then you were receiving it from that point of view. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes. So it's like your higher guidance isn't going to speak to you in Spanish if you can only understand English. If you
That,
can think of it that way, that's pretty much how it works.
right. And now that I've entered this pathway myself and I'm working in a highly intuitive way, I understand everything you're saying. But for the people at home, when people are new and they're starting this and they're talking, you're doing your automatic writing. What is What is a process you suggest for new people who are kind of curious about seeing an intuitive? Like a lot of people are fearful of they're going to get bad news or someone's going to, pass on or just bad news, funk stuff like that. I personally never fear that because I know that's not how it goes. But when someone's sort of seeking and interested, but a little nervous to pick up the phone to call you, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say, first of all, go into it with a joyful heart. It's just an exploration. So, just as if you would go and maybe take an art class or have a new adventure in something. Look at it that way, like it's just like a new adventure. And keep open. I think our ability to be open to change is probably one of our strongest states of being. So if you can be open to change, that will take care of the session. Don't worry about it. But also, I would suggest for those of you that have never had a session before, maybe ask some questions, write them down, and some things you want to know. But don't be surprised if by the end of the session, your questions have already been answered before you ask them.
All the time.
Yeah, and try to keep that time like uninterrupted, so you're not chasing the dog or looking after your children or cooking supper or whatever it is that's taking your focus away from the session. So try to be very aware, very focused on what it is that you're doing, but with a joyful heart and an open mind.
I think
Best way to do it.
so. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to back up here for a minute. What got you into this pathway? How did you step into this reality?
Well, that's really interesting. So I would have to go back to when I was a very young child. I lived in a farming community, and in our community, we had a lot of family. So we had a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff. And I always found it interesting how when everybody got together to visit and the adults were talking, I used to love to stand on the sideline and kind of be a little eavesdropper. And what they were saying never matched what I was feeling that they wanted to say. And I can remember talking to my mom about it one time, God bless her. And she just kind of, I don't know, just kind of shoved it off type of thing. But I could tell that something about it really, I won't say annoyed her, but shook her up. And then we had moved into town. I was probably at this time, maybe in grade 3. And we used to attend a certain church. And I remember having this burning question that I just needed to know. And as an adult, I've totally forgotten the question, but I've never forgotten the experience. And the same thing happened to me. I went to mom with it. She wasn't able to answer, but she very wisely said, talk to the minister, ask the minister about it. So I went to him and asked him, and I got the same reaction from him that I did from mom with my observation much earlier in life. And I always found that so interesting. But anyway, I've always been drawn to, it's like there's been an innate knowing that things were never quite the way they seemed on the surface, that there was a much more beautiful, bigger, more intense life under the surface of everything. And as a child, that can be really confusing. And I think we're experiencing a lot of that in this day and age as well, with a lot of the children that are coming in, comprised of these newer frequencies. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know these children that are coming in are unbelievably aware, and they come in and they take a look around in this world and they're like, what is going on? Like, what kind of drugs are these people on? And that's kind of how it was for me back then. So in an attempt to kind of satisfy my curiosity, I started reading a lot of books. And one of my very favorite authors from back then was Ruth Montgomery. A lot of people have probably never heard of her, but she was a journalist back in, I believe, I want to go to the 50s. No, sorry, earlier than that. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but she was a journalist, and she started learning how to do automatic writing. And she did it with, of course, a typewriter at the time, because that was the instrument of choice for journalists back then. And that was thought to be pretty progressive. But I was determined. So I sat, oh my goodness, I sat every day and tried to like write. And of course, knowing that I didn't want my body to do the writing, I wanted it to come through me. So you can imagine it was quite a journey. And let me just say that at the very beginning, it was interesting because when I actually started getting some movement happening, when I developed enough, I guess, and things started moving, it took 2 sheets of paper. And what it was the letter 8. I thought it was the letter 8. And it went over 2 sheets of paper. That's how big it was, and that's how large my movement was. Um, and I realize now that the largeness of the movement was to get my attention, right, as well as practice, allowing them to be doing the moving. But I later realized that the letter 8 wasn't the letter 8, it was the darn infinity sign
I was thinking that the
that
whole
they
time.
were trying to come through. Yeah, it was interesting. And then from there, it just became a progression of meditating, learning how to meditate. For me, there's a million ways, just like there's a million ways to make pierogies, there's a million ways to meditate. And you need to find what works for you. And if you're really unsure, start with a couple guided ones at the beginning and then just morph it into what works for you. There's no hard and fast rules with anything to do with energy. And I guess the thing that kept me going was the fact that I knew that it appeared as if science and spirituality were separate, but I knew they really weren't underneath. And that has probably been an underlying theme for me my whole life, is that knowing that at some point science was going to prove spirituality and vice versa. And we are there. We're there. It's
Absolutely.
interesting.
Absolutely. And I feel like science and spirituality are the same thing. You see, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, all of these other scientists exploring both of these realities. And from my research and understanding, this is as old as the hills. This is as old as the dinosaurs, like this is really old. And this is not new information, but it may have been suppressed by the outside world to sustain some sort of sense of normalcy, what they call normalcy in mainstream society per se. But like
Yes.
what you're saying, just referring back to when you were a kid, and people were saying things that what was coming out of their mouth wasn't necessarily what you were seeing or feeling or believing was what they wanted to say. I had a similar experience as a child and I didn't know. I would just look at everybody and I thought there was, pardon me, but I thought there was lies, like a lot of lies being told everywhere. And I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. And I'm like, why can't they see that? Why can't they say that? Why aren't they speaking up about
Yeah.
that? Like I had all these big questions too. And I'm like, it's not even true.
Yeah.
That's not what she said. Stuff like that was happening. I was very observant as well. And maybe all kids are, maybe the majority of kids
Mhm.
are tuned into this stuff because we're so open and awake when we're little. And then we get kind of caught into the societal compressions and, you know, good behavior versus bad behavior type of thing. But when you
Yeah.
said you had to this desire to write, what does that desire to write, where does that come from? Like what's
That comes from your soul. It actually feels like an internal pressure, and you don't know what it's about, but it's like one of the things that happens is your mind goes, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something deeper. There's got to be something more fulfilling. There's got to be something more meaningful. I'm talking about in life. And you start to get that feeling, and it feels like a pressure, but not a pressure from the outside in. It's like a pressure from the inside out. And when you experience that, please don't deny it. Most of us just kind of poo-poo it away, or we try to ignore it, or we try to explain it away. But that is actually your soul. It's your higher self just going, like in my case, it's like, hey, Ruby, we need some of your attention, or hey, Trina, pay attention, you know. Um, and so for anybody, who's feeling that. Please don't ignore it. So just find what works for you. Read some good books. There's so many books out there right now. Um, there's all kinds of facilitators that are putting on courses that help open you up, and they're blending it. They're taking all the woohoo out of this, out of the energy work, of spirituality, whatever you want to call it. But all of that is going away. And they're starting to get you to understand, they're starting to get us to understand that we're energetic beings. We live in an energetic world. Everything around us, the chair we sit on is energy. It's just a matter of the form the energy takes.
And it's all
And
changeable, right? We can, once we start slipping into it and sort of becoming aware. So my big thing with People for Peace is self-awareness, right? We cannot change our realities until we become a little more self-aware. And that means gently and lovingly calling ourselves out if we're grumpy or jealous or whatever the things are. And sort of just getting more in touch with that personality that we have, right? And I believe we were assigned to these gifts, like you're talking about in episode 5. We're talking to Dr. Travis, a chiropractor, and I was kind of mentioning, I feel like we're kind of assigned to some of these gifts. Like we get the creators and say, Ruby, you're going to be an intuitive writer. Trina, you're going to be a filmmaker and a photographer. And but you know, we're going to do we're going to give these people these personalities in this game of life, in this movie of life. And you're all going to have some certain talents and gifts, and then explore them, expand them, you know. And then we all have to sort of realize that in this place of life, the story of life, the movie of life, we're all just characters, right? And we're growing and evolving. And I believe, and I've heard intuitively many times, that we're here to learn how to love. Life is essentially the school of love. So we're learning all of these different topics. We're learning, you know, addictions. We're learning resentment. We're learning happiness. We're learning joy. We're learning all the different topics here. But sometimes when we are ready, we'll meet certain people and mentors that'll come on our path and open new doors for us. And that's essentially how we met, right? You opened a door for me at a very critical time in my life when I had nowhere else to turn. Like I
And
was
not by accident.
right. I went to see a counselor because I just had so much mental stress and emotional turmoil. And I went to a counselor. Bless her heart, but the counselor literally turned me away and said, "You don't need a counselor. You're fine." And I was like, "What counselor says that?" And I was stunned. I was floored. So I go back to my office and I get your magazine and your card and I make the 911 Ruby call. I remember coming there and I was like, hope nobody sees me because I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I need to go to this thing. Like it's my only option, right? And I go in there and it was lovely. The space was lovely. The music was lovely. It was all lovely. It was very lovely. But I was scared as, you know, can be because I had no idea what you were going to present to me. And one of the first things that you did present to me was you said, well, your guides want to talk about your ego. And I was like, I don't have an ego. This is the short version. And you're like, that's it right there. And I remember after getting that chip off my shoulder and like getting a little twitch in my neck about it, that really stuck with me. So it was one of my biggest life lessons that I was served like right out of the gates. And I'm not trying to say that to scare anybody because we all have egos and I've been talking about it in every episode of this show. But I'm saying it because my guides and my higher consciousness has said to me before I started this particular show was, we need to talk about the ego and we need to get people familiar with what the ego is and does and how it can work for us so that we can break down barriers and walls and progress to a higher state of consciousness. So my guide said ego is first base. What does ego mean to you, Ruby?
So my understanding of ego used to be, it's this physiological part that we're born with. And so if you're coming to the physical plane, which as far as I know, Earth is the only physical plane that exists. So if you're coming here, your soul is going to be entering into a body and it's also going to be equipped with an ego. And so the ego is a tool that is mainly run by fear, and its sole purpose is to keep us alive. That's it. That's its purpose, to keep us alive, and then various forms of aliveness from there, like safe or out of harm or not hurt, whatever our mind can come up with within that spectrum, right? That's what it is. But interestingly enough, you and I had a conversation a little while back, and it sparked me to ask them about the ego. When I say them, I mean my higher guidance, which is also your higher guidance. So what they said, we tell you the ego be the guidance of life minus source. That's it. It's just a tool. It can be assimilated into our being as an aggressive if there's lack of source. So this was interesting. This was new to me too, a new understanding and a new awareness. If there be lack of source awareness. So when they say source awareness, that means if we think we're just bodies and everything external to us is what runs our life, then your ego is probably going to be quite aggressive. And I would assume that you're probably going to have a lot of fear and a lot of anger in your life. You're going to live a very reactive life. So very reactive to anything that's going on in your external world, okay? Or a passive guidance, if there be source awareness. So passive guidance is your ego still doing its job, keeping you alive, but it's not the aggressor. And it kind of takes a back seat to that part of you that's beyond the conditioned mind, to that part of you that you get in touch with every now and then, and you know it's bigger than you. You know it's bigger than your life. You just know it. When you touch it, you know it. So the ego can be assimilated into that. We call that source awareness. That means you're aware of your creator and you're aware that your creator is part of you, right? Okay, I don't want to poke my eyeball out with my glasses here. And so, okay, or a passive guidance if there be a source awareness. So that's really what your ego is. So we tend to think that ego is like conceitedness and, but it's really not. It's just a tool that we have to guide us in our physical life. The problem with the ego is that because it runs mostly on a program of fear, it keeps a library of every past thing that has ever happened to us as a human race, multi-generations going back to the very beginning of time. And it pulls from that. So sometimes it's an experience you yourself haven't even had, but the signature of fear or the energy of fear that was created at that time becomes part of the collective. And so it's very tied into this big body of fear. And so when you're fearful for your life, you do act more aggressive, right? If you're fearful that something's going to occur that you don't like or that it can lessen you in some degree, you're going to become very aggressive. And so if you don't have a lot of source awareness or a lot of self-awareness, if you haven't worked too much on personal development, and if you're mostly running from what's going on externally in your life, you're going to have a very aggrandized, aggressive ego.
Yeah.
So that's that. If that helps, I don't know.
It's deep. It's deep, but I understand it. And I think people might have to play this back a couple times to kind of really digest it. And I encourage you to do so because I think that's important, especially such a big topic like the ego, right? And
Yeah.
you were talking kind of sparked for me that these generational traumas and things and beliefs that we've had and experienced, I could just sense them coming in like, oh, this is why I'm so always, trying to protect my kids, or I'm over the top with that maybe because I have these these things I'm carrying from different generations that have still kind of attached to me and my ego in this protective state, right? That so now that I can become kind of
Yes.
more aware of that, I could shift that and alter that hopefully somewhat for my kids or my grandkids and help them change that reality. But that involves us looking at our own stuff. And sometimes people, the ego really flares up when it won't let you look at your own stuff, you know?
Especially right now. So one of the things that's occurring is, I mean, I love these times. We're in such a miraculous time right now. It is so congruent to evolvement at this particular time. So we have all this stuff that's occurring in our external world, and you'd have to be living under a rock to not be affected by, the things that are happening on the global political stage right now. And many of us are experiencing it in our own communities and maybe in our own homes where we've had job loss, prices are so high, we can't make the paycheck last, for the whole pay period. There's all kinds of things that are occurring. And what we're seeing with that is that it is creating this pressure cooker for people. And so all of these pockets of density, um, actually, just let me back up a minute. So remember, I was talking about everything being energy. So when we have energy or when we have thoughts, beliefs, emotions, experiences that don't really serve us, we tend to store them away because we don't want to have a look at them really. And so they're very dense in nature. So dense in nature, I mean that the frequency of them is very low, so they move very slowly. It's kind of like the difference between a stream and a rock, so a stream is flowing, it's moving, it's high energy. A rock is very dense, it's solid. So if you could imagine your body having an energetic body that's bigger than your body, and in there, we hold little pockets of energy that are vibrating at different frequencies. And so any emotion that you're holding, any experience that you're holding that's not really serving you is going to be held in your body. And what's happening now is all of this stuff that's happening on the outside of us is activating that energy. And so it's activating it, it's moving it, it's vibrating up, and it's coming to the outer layer of our being, which is our awareness and what we call consciousness. And so what we're finding now is we're having these little flare-ups of absolute anger, and we don't know, wait, why am I feeling this way? Or somebody looks at us or says something and we're upset with them, and we don't even know where it comes from. But that's where it's coming from, is all these little pockets of density are now being activated, and there is a space being created for them to come to surface and to be released. So be very kind with yourself, be very kind with people around you because they're going through a lot right now. But what has also happened during this time is that I find, when this is for me now, when this happens and I find myself really angry, I have discovered that there is a new tool that I can use that really helps me move stuff. So, say for instance, somebody, I don't know, stepped on my toe, and I'm just like this, I blow up about it. And then I go, well, why am I so upset that they stepped on my toe? And I follow that energy back in, and it's a belief that they can harm me, that in some way, shape, or form, they can harm me. And I realize that's ridiculous. It only can appear that they're harming you. They can't really harm you. You're such high energy. You're that sliver of creation. You're that sliver of God, Allah, love, universe, whatever it is. Do you honestly think that somebody stepping on your toe can harm you? It's a belief you're holding that they can harm you. So whenever something happens and you get triggered or you think somebody is trying to swindle you, follow that back. Follow that back. How? How is that even possible? So
Mhm.
all of that stuff only happens when we get into our conditioned mind. Okay, so this is what I wanted to read. There is the greatest of movement upon your planet at this time. We encourage you um, to be fluid indeed. Many are feeling the evolutionary process. There be a sense of not grounded, much moving throughout the constructs of the body. So when they're talking about the constructs of the body, they mean whether it's a thought, belief, energy, it could be pain. So it could be following a nerve pathway where you're holding on to pain somewhere, or you're holding on to a belief that's creating pain within you. Um, Okay, great anxiety, fear, anger being moved. And in many, these densities are at conscious levels of being. We encourage all to be in awareness of who they are being in every moment. Who or what you are being can also be used in this instance. So pay attention. So when you're feeling something, like just stop, take a breath, like just take a note. How am I feeling?
I think
It's
that's
that
just
simple.
because people, I feel and see and sense that people are, they know they're on the cusp of this change of humanity and life, but they don't know what to do about it, and they don't know
Yeah.
themselves as the new lighter version. They don't even want to be the old denser version, so they're kind of stuck in between an old reality and a new reality, and they don't
Yeah.
know what to do about it. But my advice is give Ruby a 911 call, because that's what I did when I was in that stage, right? I was in that stage and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not there and I'm not there. Who am I? What am I? What am I going to do?" And I can't even believe I made this call, but suddenly I'm compelled to keep searching because it opened up so much curiosity for me going, "What else don't I know?" Because in that same first session you told me that I was going to write a book, or that I was going to,
Mhm.
in 2 years, I was going to have pen to paper and write a book. And I didn't believe you because I didn't even enjoy reading books. I don't write, I don't read books. I didn't believe you. And so I was like, oh, that's it. This lady doesn't know what she's talking about. And I was kind of looking for a way to condemn you because I thought it was so far out there, like psychics, mediums. What is this world? It's nothing of my reality. It seemed really
Yeah.
far-fetched, if I can be so frank. But
Mhm.
in that 2 year period, ta-da, pen to paper, the book, right?
Yes.
Called Become, Begin to Be. And it's just a simple journey about how we become and we begin to be this higher version of ourselves and tap into the
Mhm.
things that are coming to us and allow them, right? So I want to say thank you for putting up with me all these years, because I was probably just a little punk in your cupcake and
Oh,
like challenging all these things.
not at all. Not at all. That's what, and you've probably discovered it for yourself, Trina. When you do sessions with people, it is such a gift to you yourself because I find that by getting to sit in their energy, and just so I just want to clear up a myth right from the get-go. When we are able to sit in your energy or have a sense of your energy, we don't know all your secrets. We don't know anything beyond what your higher self wants to relay to you. So just relax about that. But it's always such an honor to be able to sit in somebody else's energetic experience, because and for a lot of that stuff I don't have to go create it myself to learn from it. I get to learn through being the go-between, to being the channeler, right? So it's really an honor to be able to do that, and especially I just love the friendship that you and I have created out of all this, Trina, and the fact that we could laugh about it all.
Yeah, and it just needs to be that, because I think we were just probably the most like unlikely pair, but we've become such good friends. And I respect
Yeah.
you so much. And when I was on my journey, I would make the 911 Ruby call every 6 months. and get myself straightened out, get myself back on track. So to me, I look at you more as a mentor, even though I don't think you necessarily thought that. That's how I took it.
Yeah.
But I listened and I followed because after the first session rang so true to me, and it did rub me the wrong way in a few ways because it was my first dance with my ego where I could actually see the thing, right? I
Yeah.
had to chew on it, sit on it, spin on it. But I came back because what happened was I realized that you were working for my highest interest. It was to my best life that I shape a few things up, take
Yeah.
another look at things, take a hard look at some things, and be open. So I would have never called myself a writer or anything like that. I still don't call myself a writer, even though I wrote a book. And I do automatic writing like you now, but I still don't own that title. And I just, but I had to be open to the idea. And when it came, it just came. I didn't have to try. I didn't have to force it. I didn't have to work. It just
Yeah.
happened. So sometimes
Yeah.
too, people like you walk into our lives, we can see things that we couldn't see before we were blocked. Or when I work with people, a lot of times they say to me, I know I'm here for something more. I know I have a big purpose here. I know I have a mission. They say stuff like that all the time. But then there's these fears and these blocks that keep them from even exploring those realities.
Yes.
But everybody is here for something big and glorious and, God-given, because like you said, we're an aspect of God and creator. We are that. So once we get out of our own way and put the ego back there for a little bit, and have that courage and curiosity to look at what we're capable of, right? So since I wrote the book, I was like, well, actually, back in the day when I was a kid, I actually dreamed of making movies. But I live in a small town in northern Canada with no contacts, no nothing. I can run a camera, but it's a still camera. And so now that opened me up to finally getting to my film career. People for Peace was my first documentary film that just launched before this podcast. And I was so excited because I also now, with the skills and the teachings from you and others, I got to get out of my own way with the filmmaking and let it happen, right? And as a channel, so now, lo and behold, the universe set us up. You're the channel, you're the writer, you're my mentor in my mind's eye, in my mind. And here I am. And now I channel John Lennon through a small piece, a small segment that inspires this whole conversation of people for peace. Which brings me to another question, Ruby. What is a big challenge you've had to overcome doing such a interesting career? You're doing something outside of the box. What's a challenge you've had to overcome?
Well, first of all, before I answer that, congratulations. And I'm so glad you've opened up to your creativity and your beautiful, beautiful gifts, because it's really a gift for the world. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I had a lot of things I had to overcome, but one of them was the idea, what are people going to think of me? Because my mom was a teacher. My brothers are both have very successful careers, and we come from a very logical, down-to-earth family. And it just seemed like I was probably the least likely person to be opening up and talking about this kind of stuff. And it's like, what is everybody going to think? But once I started truly like meditating, it took me to places beyond, and it took me into states of being beyond what I could reach with just the physical. And it seemed like the more I was able to expand my awareness, expand my mind, the less I really cared about what people thought or said. And so, and that took a number of years. That didn't just happen overnight, believe me. I think things progress much faster now for people because I think the world is a little, I would say they're a little more on the know. And most people believe that there is something beyond just this physical world now. I mean, my goodness, when I started this, the idea of even reincarnation was like, oh my God, you must be possessed. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so we've come a long way as like you know, in the world type of thing. So first of all, I had to get out of the way of, you know, oh my goodness, what are people going to think of me? Then I had to get out of my own way, my own ego, which was often with an ego, people think it's a sense of, you know, and a puffed up sense of importance. It's anything but that. So you facilitate usually on the spectrum of not having enough self-confidence to overconfidence. And it seems like you go back and forth between those for a while until you find that beautiful, beautiful place of balance. And that is ongoing and it's ever changing, just like everything in our life. Every concept, every thought, every feeling, anything that exists in the world is ever moving, ever changing. And it's this beautiful, beautiful symphony and dance of all of this stuff, millions and trillions of things going on all at the same time, and how they come together is kind of almost like looking at what is your perception in this moment. It's going to be different a minute from now. You know what I mean? And so you have to start to understand that nothing is black and white. Everything is gray. A lot of what we've been taught in society is not true. It's what we have to live by and the rules we have to live with, but it's not necessarily the truth. And then you start the process of, oh my goodness, how do I amalgamate that? Because at the beginning, it's like, okay, I'm living my life, and then I'm going to go to my desk and I'm going to be spiritual. I'm going to meditate. They're two totally separate worlds, right?
They
And
are.
that's how we treat them for the longest time. So, okay, over here, I'm being very, you know, very spiritual, and then I'm cooking supper and doing whatever, you know. And it takes a while to realize that it's all the same thing. And it has nothing to do with what you're doing. It has everything to do with your being, with how you're being. And how you're being is how you know yourself, your self-awareness.
This is where we're going, right?
And
The future. This is, in my observation and my awareness,
yeah,
this is where we're going. So we're here and you're here as a guide saying this, we're not intuitive from 2 to 5 p.m. and then mom from 5 to 7,
yeah,
or whoever. We're just it. We're wrapped in this whole bundle of humanness, intuitiveness, spiritual, loving, anger, ego, all of the things. We're all of it all
mhm,
of the time, right? And when we
yeah,
figure out how to flow with it and get out of the worry of the judgment, because you guys are the path. The intuition's been going on since the beginning of time. But you guys in
yeah,
your generation have really knocked some big cracks into the cement for people like me. So thank you very
yeah,
much. Because now it's becoming a more normal, even sought out. And before it was like, oh, they're gifted. They're the gifted ones. But in actual fact, everybody's gifted. Everybody
yeah,
has the, and I believe, and I don't know how many generations, we're all going to be telepathically talking, and I always say to my friends, we're not going to be able to lie to each other here because everybody's just going to be intuitively like, that's not
yeah.
true. That didn't happen. And in a fun, loving way, we could sort of say, because we know, right?
But there will be no purpose to lie then.
Right, because we'll be in a higher frequency, a higher vibration. We'll be more in tune with
Mhm.
love and peace and acceptance and alignment and all of those things, which is what we're aiming for. So I know that's a big, giant picture. And in coming back to the reality of the here and now, of the density and the fears and the struggles and all of those things, it's really a time when we have to go, okay, what is peace? Where do we find the peace within us, right? So this People for Peace mission is about asking people to take a look at themselves, become a little more self-aware, not judgmental either. Do not need to judge these things. What we did 3 years ago doesn't even exist anyways, right? Who we were 5 years ago is no longer relevant. Who we are in every waking moment is what matters. Go ahead. You
Absolutely. So
have
the glasses are coming on, so you know I'm going to
a
read
sign.
something
I'm
to
reading
you.
you.
So we did have this conversation around peace and love a little while back. So what I asked I asked for guidance on this, and I said, like, I know what it is, you know, just off the top of my head, and it's probably the same for most people. But they put love be the expression of source self, and peace be the experience of knowing self as source.
Wow.
So what they're saying is when you are deep in the knowing self as source, you are untouched by all the reactive drama and chaos that thrives in the physical world. So there's no difference except how they're experienced. So love is essentially source, and peace is when we express that, when we express ourselves as source in the world, that creates love. And when we have that innate experience of love, the result of that is peace. So
Wow.
it's all source, but it's how it's experienced.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Because even myself, I was just sitting here thinking, I was just guided to do this program, but I didn't necessarily know that. So thank you so much. I love that.
Yes, you didn't realize the big task you took on.
No, I never do. I just go for it.
Yeah, no, it's such a gift really for the world. So, peace is that innate knowing of yourself as source, and you have the experience of it. You've had the experience of it. So that means you've had the experience of the emotion that we call love. So in the external, love looks many different ways, but internally there's an energetic signature that is source love. It's all the same thing. But knowing ourselves as that creates the peace. So it silences all the stuff that's going on around you, outside of you.
So I just
Yeah,
heard,
you know yourself. Sorry, you only know yourself as source in that moment when you're experiencing the peace. That means you only know yourself as source. You don't know yourself as anything beyond that. It's a beautiful, beautiful state of being.
I'm sorry to have interrupted you there, but I just heard that we have to give ourselves permission to feel those feelings and allow that flow to happen. They're saying we have
Mhm.
to give ourselves permission to do that, which I find interesting.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things I was saying about getting out of my road, getting out of the road, because a lot of the things that you're going to experience will seem like it's in, I won't say conflict, but it'll seem like it's not totally in alignment with what we've been taught, or how the world works, right? What we've been taught about how the world works. It's not totally in alignment with it. And so most of us are deeply, deeply conditioned, um, to have certain beliefs around ourselves. It's why you have people that, if you can just look at the difference between people that I need an outside identification of who they are, so they will always be looking for validation of themselves outside of themselves. So how people speak to them, how they talk to them, how they treat them, what their experience of the world has been. And they think that the world is happening to them. In reality, they're happening to the world. It's an inside out job. And they don't realize that. They don't realize how powerful they are. So they act over exaggerated. Their ego becomes over exaggerated because they're trying to make up for feeling less than, because the outside world has taught them to believe that they're less than, and they really have given all their power away. So these times, the documentary you made, all of it is pointing us to how powerful we are, and that we are the ones creating our world. We're the ones creating our experiences. And so what we experience is going to depend on our perspective. It's going to depend on what our awareness of ourself as a source being is. It's
Yeah,
it's
and it's
beautiful. It's just, yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's time for every single person to confidently look in the mirror and take their kind of assignment back. I want to call it an assignment. We're here assigned to love, we're assigned to peace, we're assigned to, evolving humanity in a conscious way. And if every single
Mhm.
person just moved their dial just a little bit in towards self-awareness, self-love,
Yeah.
self-respect, and opened up to what's being served to them or presented to them, we could create a whole new reality and stop giving our power away to people like, that are in control and all of this stuff. We the
Yeah.
people could take our power back and decide how the future and society should be.
Yes. It's an evolution in human consciousness. So consciousness means awareness. And so this is all about, it's not awareness of anything outside of you.
Yes,
It's an
that's
awareness of who you are. It's an inside job. And so it's all about consciousness. It's all about awareness.
and we change all
Yeah.
of the time, right, Ruby? Like my husband jokes all
Constant.
the time, and he's like, "What personality are you going to be today? Are you the photographer, the filmmaker, the reader, the, businesswoman? Which one are you?" And I'm like, "I haven't decided yet," and I just joke around
Yeah.
because we're ever evolving, and maybe we're supposed to be. Maybe I'll be the piano player next. Maybe I'll be this. Like we're trying on all these suits and having all these experiences because we can, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like when people sort of choose, you have to make the choice to start looking at the self and not getting outside validation. And, there's so many applause that we feel like we need. And I can say that because I was one of those people and I probably still am half of the time. But when we can start to sort of recognize it's ourselves that need to applaud ourselves and we need to create things for our own self appreciation and recognition. We don't need that anywhere else, right? Like you said, get out of the outside and get more onto the inside job you spoke of. I think that's key.
Mhm.
And people feel stuck. They feel really stuck. They're like, still not knowing what to do, but I hope after they finish this episode, they realize that there are resources they can call, there are people that they can reach out to. Because I also feel like it's just this looking at the self and evolving self is like any other practice going to a dance class or a music class. You have to show up for yourself every week, every day,
Yeah.
read the books, talk to the people, choose it on purpose, choose exploring your ego. Now I want to ask you this, Ruby. We talk about ego in every episode, but I have not talked about essence too much. I don't even think I've mentioned it, but I wanted to close this whole segment series with the topic of essence because we talk about ego and we talk about essence because we're supposedly aiming for essence. I tattooed on my hand the word essence after I met you because you were
Mhm.
guiding me to get back
Oh,
into my essence. I never
yeah.
told you that, hey? This was
No.
this was since our very first visit. And the reason I put
Wow.
my tattoo there was because when I was holding my portrait camera working in my studio, it's where I could see it all the time in my face, in my eye. My eye was right underneath it. So I planted it there
Beautiful.
for my own lesson. Okay. And I still use it. So I was like, I don't really know what essence is, but if I put it in my face all of the time, I'll remember if something ticks me off. I'll remember if I'm frustrated, I'll remember to aim towards that. At the very least, I'm aiming. You know what I mean? Might not hit it, but I'm
Mhm.
practicing. So, what is essence, Ruby?
So for me, my essence is the energy that's created when I know myself as source. It's kind of like the bubbly, the movement of the energy of knowing myself as source. So you can look also like essence is also like your soul. It's like that sliver of your creator or sliver of God that you are, that is total in its being, and that is you. So it's interesting, but I often look at it this way because I need things in an ABC language or I don't understand them half the time. So I look at my body, and then within my body, around my heart area, is what I call the heart chakra. And on the body side of my heart chakra is a little thing called a master cell. And then there's my heart chakra. Then on the back side of my heart chakra is a reducer, and it is the soul. And then on the back side of the soul, it opens up to infinity, and that is source. So you go from source, which is everywhere, all the time, everything. And there's no way our bodies can handle that. Our circuits just aren't made to handle that. So we need that reducer of soul. And that's its job. It's to allow all of that energy to come in, any energy we're calling for to come in. And we call for it by activating the parts of our DNA. That's how we decide what energy is coming in. It's coming in to your soul, which reduces it and makes it usable for us, where we're able to tolerate it. It brings it down enough that we're able to tolerate it. It hits our heart chakra. From our heart chakra, it spreads throughout all the other chakras of our body. And the chakras of our body are basically transmitters and receivers of this energy. And their job is to send it to all the systems of our body, all the organs of our body, every muscle, bone, tissue, cell, and nerve, everything you can think of regarding the body. It sends it through there. And one of the ways it does it is through a master cell. So when things hit that master cell, it hits every cell of your being, or it can be sent through every cell of your being. And so it's really interesting when we talk about essence, because I believe essence is kind of that part of ourselves that knows ourselves as source. And that is the process that it kind of goes through. And so, so we talk about aura as well, right? Which is our energy. That's the output of our energy. So essence is right from source, right through to the physical experience, and then emanated out into our physical world. And that's our job. That's our job, is to remember ourselves as source, be as self-aware as we can of ourselves as source. And we're bringing that high frequency energy, that remembering of who we are, we're bringing it to this physical dimension at this time. And we need as many of us to do this as we possibly can. That's how we change. That's how we evolve. That's how consciousness evolves. That's how everyone can have the experience of knowing themselves as something more than just their body and their outside world.
Yeah.
Boy, that was a lot.
Yeah. And the mainstream end of it, though, like there's Trina and sitting here in Dawson Creek. Some of the kind of logical and practical executions of this can be kindness, love, doing somebody a favor, shoveling somebody's snow, mowing their lawn without asking. You just feels good. You're just radiating pure, genuine love and grace and humility and all of those things. It just comes out in those sort of ways, right?
Yes, that's how
Many,
you're
many,
being. Yeah.
many ways, but those are just a few examples. So, because I was, when you were giving the explanation of essence coming in as this energy source, but then it goes out, how do we know it and recognize it as it's going out? Kind people, good people, loving people. When we're at our best, when we're at our most pure, genuine, giving, authentic selves, showing up and being real and those kind of things, right? And that's essentially essence. And also having grace for others for the periods and places that they're in, right? Not judging them. And if somebody does step on your toe, not giving them the what for, but accepting, hey, that was an accident. They didn't mean that. Even if it was funky, you can give them some grace and not let it take you over and take you down, right?
You could see it as the gift it is, the opportunity to follow that thought back, to find out where you're holding energy that doesn't serve you.
Yeah. because that's what happens, right? We'll stew on things, we'll
Yeah.
have a thought and we'll chew on it and stew on it and stew, and then relationships are falling apart and this and that's happening. And then all of a sudden we blow because we've held in so many emotions, thoughts, and energy for so long. And then finally we just can't take it, right?
Yeah.
And this is the state that we're at with the world right now, sort of going, okay, if everything's topsy-turvy out there, and there's a lot of topsy-turvy, but there's also a lot of brilliant forward-thinking individuals creating things, like a lot of great things are happening. So it's also like where we put our focus is really important right now, right? And this is where the consciousness and the topic of consciousness and investigating our ego, investigating our essence, and letting that come through, I think is essential right now while we're creating this new future and this new paradigm on purpose, right? When we get into the
Yes.
pureness of our soul and the pureness of our essence, we don't even have to try. We just have to flow and we have to allow. One thing I did want to
Yeah.
ask you about that you brought up there was chakras. Can you give us a brief description of, of the seven chakras, just kind of letting people know? For me, that was one of the earlier tools that I learned that did sort of help me kind of regulate with my body, regulate with my soul, and my realizing that there's all these energy centers going up our body
Mhm.
and spine that talk to us about our emotions and our intuition and things like that. Do you have any words of wisdom?
Sorry, Trina, you probably can speak on that more than I can. That wasn't an area that I particularly spent a lot of time in, other than to know that we have the seven energy centers of our body. And that basically their job was to distribute that source energy to each one of the chakras has a certain area of the body that they distribute energy to, and that they can take energy from. Uh, because just remember that we are a transmitter too, not just a receiver of energy. And so, and there are certain emotions that can, because emotion is energy. So anything, whether it's, and even tones, like voices, they're frequencies as well. So each one of our chakras is aligned with uh, a spectrum of tone, is aligned with a spectrum of color, is aligned with a spectrum of emotion, and they affect our total being, and they can do it separately or they can do it as one system together. But as far as the individual, you probably can speak more on that, Trina.
Well, and it's something you can look up on the internet as well. But because you spoke of the
Mhm.
heart chakra so much, I won't go into a deep dive, but this is the one I feel like people could really start paying attention to. It's the energy center of the heart. So your heart, I always tell my clients that we have three brains. We have the heart brain, we have the mind brain, and we have the gut brain, right? And
Mhm.
those three brains are telling us things all of the time. And sometimes they play together and sometimes they don't. But with the heart chakra, it's the easiest one to help you navigate a situation, right? If something doesn't feel good or right, don't do it or say it, right? And if it
Mhm.
feels like, oh my God, I just need to do that, then trust that energy center, work with it, right? So just getting more in touch with the body. So through this series, we started the segment talking to Tanya Paulson, who does breath classes, and she taught us something, the most simple, basic skill, reminding us about the power of the breath. You spoke of meditation, getting in touch with our breath consciously and becoming aware,
Mhm.
moving dense energies, moving different emotions around the body, and just being in touch with the breath. And then we move through our conversations about different relationships with motherhood, the physical body, the spine. Now we're kind of tapping out here, talking to the intuitive body and the intuitive personality and this relationship that we all have and can tap into. I feel like it's really important that we just offer the journey of exploration for people right now, and they'll come in wherever they're at, obviously, right? And I encourage you
Yes.
to maybe watch this episode a couple of times, because I know when we're talking energy it can feel like blah, 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 just kind of goes in and goes out. And when I was getting your sessions earlier in the day, I would listen to them every couple months. And about the 6 month mark, I'd be like, that all makes perfect sense now. But at the time, a
Yeah.
lot of it was kind of over my head. But then as I evolved and grew, it made perfect sense and it was so on point. So I would just encourage people just to hit replay on anything, whether it's a book or a podcast or whatever, to kind of help those things subconsciously sink in a little bit more. Mm-hmm.
Yes, most things are, we talked about how energy is constantly moving, no matter what form it takes. And so when you're having like a session with somebody or reading a book, it is multi-layered. So it might activate or trigger in you something that's at a grade 2 or 3 level. But it also has information in there for you at, say, maybe a grade 10 to 12 level. But you're not going to understand this grade 10 trigonometry if you're still working on your subtraction and addition. And it doesn't mean anything. It just means that if you don't speak that language, you're not going to understand it. So many of us believe that because we've been taught this from society and in the outside world, that we start here and we want to end up here and we want to be successful and we want to be rich and we need to make it to this place right here. In reality, there's nothing linear about the world. We move and energy moves cyclical, and there is no endpoint. There's just experience upon experience upon experience. And so the energy that's moving like this, there's millions and trillions of energetic frequencies that are moving, and it's how they come together. And at what point you're tuning into that, at what point you're aligning with is what you're going to experience. And so it kind of takes away, when you think about it, it kind of takes away that pressure we experience when we're starting at point A and we want to get to point Z. We feel a lot of pressure to get there, right? So if you can just think that it's not about that, it has nothing, there's no end destination, none. It's just experience upon experience.
There is no Z, there is no end, right? So what it makes me realize too is, playing sports or what have you, you always want to start at the basic skills, right? When you can play a game of basketball or whatever, if you're using the basic skills really well, you can win the game, no problem. So have joy of going into kindergarten to learn about yourself, to find out who you are, to reposition yourself, to explore and discover. Be glorious about going into kindergarten. That's what I did. That's what I still do. And I always go back to kindergarten. I don't know that one. I don't know that one. And be happy to restart, right? There's some things that happen and you can't really get to grade 10 or whatever unless you've done all of those things. But I think that's the joy. If we want to build a solid team going forward, we have to get everybody in kindergarten first.
Yes, absolutely.
And love it and play and explore with the colors, all of the things, and just let it be. It should just be playful.
It's a beautiful world. I think every day I am so grateful, and I say my own little prayer, for my body, my vitality, the health, and also for my life, because I believe life is the perfect container to experience and express ourselves as source. It's the perfect container for it. So, and I have so much gratitude for that. Yeah.
So well said. And that's just it. We only get this one shot this one time, right? So if we show up a little more consciously, we write our own scripts a little more detailed, we get in there and we play these characters to the best of our ability and allow them to change, allow them to evolve, allow them to grow. What a world we'll have. And what a time to be alive this is right now anyways. I think this is, although it's topsy-turvy, I am thrilled to be in this driver's seat right now. Carving and creating and playing. And so thank you for the role you've played in my life, Ruby. You've made such a large dent, you'll never know.
Oh my goodness, you're welcome. And you brought so much joy to my life too. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Thank you. So how can people find you and get a hold of you, Ruby?
Well, there's a couple different ways. So I've got a website, www.rubytunke.com. So whether you've had experiences and sessions before or a first timer, I love being able to assist, and I feel it's a big honor to be able to assist somebody. I've also written a children's book. It just talks about the fact that our energy is forever. It never dies. The only thing that changes about our energy is the form it takes. And it's based around a little girl and her relationship with her grandfather who passes away. And he just shares that with her in a way that it's really interesting. But whether you're an adult or whether you're a child, I've seen the same expression on both faces as it just hits them that, this body that we're in is maybe not a forever thing. And it doesn't mean when somebody passes away that they're gone. It just means the form their energy's taken has changed. That's it.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, I really enjoyed writing that book. And yeah, so hopefully that's something. And to get a copy of that, I believe it's Amazon. Or you can email me, phone me, whatever. I can send you a copy. Yeah.
Put those links up there.
I'd love to hear from anybody who reaches out. That'd be great. And thank you, Trina, for having me on. I just so appreciate getting together with you whenever we have that opportunity.
No, it's been such a joy, and I appreciate you coming. Are there any final words of wisdom or anything else you want to share with us before we close our session today?
I would say just be yourself, be aware of how you're being, and be open to change. Very powerful, powerful states.
And it sounds so simple. Sometimes doesn't feel that simple, but once we put the ego in the backpack for a little bit and just flow, it does become easier, right? And so this relationship that we're forming with ourselves, and I know in the past we had this whole analogy of give to others, worry about others, and put ourselves in the backseat. That was kind of an older paradigm. Now we're kind of saying, hey, let's focus on ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in a way that creates awareness and consciousness. So we can go, I don't need that version anymore, or that part of me is done. I've outgrown it. Now I'm going to work on this next part. So as we're creating people for peace and we're tapping into our souls, missions, desires, really building that relationship of self-love and self-respect, because we are part of higher consciousness and creator, we can do the rest of this gig and the rest of this show with more ease, more compassion, more respect for ourselves and each other, and create the world we desire. Thank you very much, Ruby, for coming and being a part of this. And everyone, rush out and call 911 Ruby. Thank you so much. Take care. Peace. Wow, that was deep. So Ruby is one of those movement makers, movement shakers. She makes stuff happen. She spikes the energy around us. She makes things transform even when she's not trying. So we had a little bit of a deeper conversation today. We went in and twisted and turned inside the topic of energy and intuition. She's an absolute gem. She is so passionate about helping people find their balance and their greatness and all of those things. I highly recommend you give her a call and see what information she can share with you as we co-create this new collective consciousness of love, peace, and reality. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can find me at trinagower.com, and I invite you to check out the documentary People for Peace on YouTube as well. Thank you very much for your role in creating collective peace, love, and growing this state of consciousness through self-awareness, self-discovery, and making change on purpose. Peace.